was the last time you got checked for a sexually transmitted infection? Hey everyone, I'm Coach Ty, and welcome to another episode of Well Jawn Wednesdays. Thanks for joining me. This is where we have real talk about real wellness for the real you. So today's topic, sometimes it could be a little taboo. We're going to be talking about sexually transmitted infections or STIs, but it's basically the same thing as sexually transmitted diseases or STDs. So we're going to get into what the most common ones are, how to get tested, and really just to break up some of the stigma about STDs, because I know that a lot of times men and women or boys and girls don't want to talk about it, but we have to talk about it so that we're taking better care of ourselves and making the conversation comfortable for everyone. Because the reality is, if you're sexually active, it's a real danger. It's a real problem. Okay. So let's get started. So just for those of you that don't know, sexually transmitted infections are infections that could be caused by bacteria, viruses, or even parasites. Okay, we're going to get into some of the common ones, which I'm sure you've heard about: chlamydia, gonorrhea, herpes, syphilis, HIV, which can turn into AIDS, and HPV or human papillomavirus. And if you tuned into the Well Jawn Wednesdays episode about cervical cancer, you learned that HPV is a virus where it's so many different strains of it, but there are very dangerous strains that can lead to cervical cancer. So HPV is a lot more concerning for women than it is for men. However, men can contract it, but because they don't have a cervix, they can't get cervical cancer. So although HPV is in that category of STDs, we don't really look at it the same way, because most people who are sexually active is going to get it at some point in time, are going to get it at some point in time. So if you didn't watch that episode, please tune in, okay? It should be where we spoke about cervical cancer and pap smears on the Well Jawn Wednesdays YouTube page. But let me just give you a few fast facts, because I know it's not always easy or comfortable to talk about this, but it's a reality for a lot of people. Over 1 million STIs are acquired every day worldwide. And that's from the World Health Organization. And that statistic is from 2024. So this is very recent, last year. Over 1 million are acquired every single day. That's a lot. Also, in the U.S., there were over 2.5 million combined cases of chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis in 2022, and that was from the CDC. And lastly, just to give you more insight on how real it is, 1 in 2 sexually active people will contract an STI by the age of 25, and many don't even know they're infected. So we have to talk about this, because clearly it's very, very common, and we need to know what's going on with us so that if we are sexually active, we're not only looking out for ourselves, but we're looking out for somebody else or the person that we're active with. So let's dig into it a little bit. STIs, like I mentioned, there's so many: chlamydia, gonorrhea, HPV, HIV, herpes. They, a lot of times, depending on which one we're talking about, you may not see any symptoms, or you may not experience them until months, maybe years later. So it's important, if you're sexually active, to make sure you're routinely getting your checks, whether you're a man or a woman. And that should be at least once a year. And one thing that we'll get into a little later is also the importance of women and men who are in monogamous relationships, whether it be a marriage or a relationship. Even if you're in a monogamous situation, you should still be getting tested. This is not to say that your partner is out there doing something and, you need to know, but you just never know, right? We never know. And sometimes these STDs can lie dormant in our bodies where we're not exhibiting symptoms. We may get checked and it's negative at the time, but maybe we had a stressful event in our lives or things came up and now this STD is coming back. That happens a lot. And I know it's hard to understand, but it's important to consistently get checks every year so that also you'll kind of know exactly if something comes back positive, you'll know exactly when it is or around the time you contracted it, because you knew last year or the year before, okay, I knew I was in a clear and I did have a new partner. So now that makes a little more sense. So it's important to get tested regularly. It's important, of course, to practice safe sex, whether that be abstinence, not having sex at all, or using condoms, especially with new partners. And I will also encourage that if you are going to be sexually active with a new partner, prior to that even happening, you both should be getting tested for everything you could possibly get tested for. And you should also show each other your results. Okay. I know this is not the most, I guess, comfortable conversation, but if you're going to lay down with someone and potentially share some bodily fluids with them, I think it's important that you have no shame in saying, hey, when was the last time you got checked? And if it was a little too long, okay, let's get checked together. Okay. I'm not saying that it's you. I'm not saying it's me. Let's just do it together so we know our status and we know where we stand so that we can make sure we're healthy. And just to bring the focus to Black women for a minute, Black women are very much affected by STDs in a very disproportionate way, okay? Black women, they accounted for 55% of all reported gonorrhea cases among women in the U.S., and this is from the CDC's report of 2022. So it is a few years ago, but just that gives you some understanding of that's more than half. Black women accounted for more than half of all gonorrhea cases. And why is that? That could be due to lack of care, lack of awareness or education, systemic health disparities. I mean, we've talked about that a few times on Well Jawn Wednesdays, how as Black people and people of color, we have a lot of disparities in our community when it comes to healthcare. We're not always getting the advocacy we need. We're not maybe always getting the resources. Things are not always readily available. And if you don't know that this is a problem or that this is prevalent, you're not going to know to get tested for it. So this is one of the ongoing goals of me as a coach, as a wellness coach, as a registered nurse, to educate the community and to be able to say, you know what? I know we didn't talk about this a lot, but it's a real thing. And if we don't get ahead of it, it can cause major problems. So let's just have the uncomfortable talks now so we can be healthy later. Okay. This is not just about our choices. It's about everything like systems, access, and education. Because again, as Black people and people of color, we unfortunately have been not taken care of in the way that we should. Okay. So it's not our fault that we lack the awareness or education, but nowadays there's a lot of resources that we can use. And hopefully Well Jawn Wednesdays is a resource that makes you understand things just a little better so that you feel better informed of what's going on. So I want to erase the shame around STDs because, as I mentioned earlier, 1 in 2 people are going to get some form of STD. So it's so common. Just because we're not talking about it, or maybe somebody that you know may not have been honest or even felt comfortable enough to share it with you, it doesn't mean that it's not happening. It's happening. So if it's in your situation, or if that's something you've had to deal with or are dealing with, you are not alone. And so you should not have any shame or guilt around it. You just now have the tools to make better decisions in the future. I want you to know that sexually transmitted infections, they don't determine your worth. It doesn't mean you're dirty. It doesn't mean you lack value. Okay. So many people live with it in silence, or that they don't even get treated for it because they're embarrassed. You know, how do I, somebody just shared with me that they tested positive for HIV. How do I go and my doctor and say that? I don't feel right about that. But that's not how it should be. Providers are there to take care of you. And there is something called HIPAA, which is pretty much a confidentiality agreement where what is discussed between you and your doctor or your provider is between you and your provider. They don't have to share it. They are legally required not to share it unless it's pertinent to your care. And you definitely don't have to share it with anyone that you don't want to know, because that's your business. And I definitely want to encourage or continue to encourage these open conversations, not only with your partner, but with your providers. Okay. Even if you have a provider that feels like, oh, well, we just tested you for that, maybe we don't need to. If you feel very adamant about it for whatever your reasons are, advocate for yourself and say, well, actually, I understand, but I want to get tested for it. Thank you. Your body deserves to be cared for, even if it feels awkward, which it will most of the time, even if you're scared. Let's normalize testing like we normalize everything else, because this is our health. And it doesn't matter how much money we have. It doesn't matter what our achievements are. It doesn't matter. Anything externally doesn't matter if we're not healthy inside. It's very important. So why should you get tested besides the obvious reason of making sure you're healthy? There are a few other reasons why it's really important to get tested annually or more often if you have high risk sexual behavior. Many STIs, as I mentioned earlier, they're asymptomatic, and asymptomatic means you won't get symptoms. You can carry it and not know. Monogamy does not always mean mutual testing or honesty. So as I said earlier, you could be in a relationship and you maybe was with this partner for a long time or even a marriage. And you may think, oh, well, I don't have to worry about anything. I've been with the same partner. Please get tested. Okay. Like I said, I'm not trying to make any inferences or make any assumptions or badmouth anybody, but please get tested. People do bring past exposures into new relationships, even years later. Like I mentioned, there's some STDs or STIs that lie dormant, and certain things in the body might bring it up. So that's why yearly testing is so important, because it may give you a better gauge of when you contracted it or who you might have contracted it from. If infidelity does happen, as we know, and testing is about you. It's not about your partner. You can deal with them later, but this testing that I'm talking about is about you and your health and ensuring that you keep tabs on what's going on with you so that you can handle your business and be in the most healthiest state possible. Testing is not about distrust. It's about ownership of your health and your peace of mind, okay? Please remember that. So how do you get tested? What are the different options? Well, as I always recommend, you can definitely start with your primary doctor. Okay, if you're a woman and you go to your gynecologist yearly, as you should be, even if you don't have to get a pap smear every year, you should still be checking in with your doctor yearly. So whether it's your primary or your gynecologist, you can let them know, hey, can I get tested for STDs? And there's a couple different ways of testing, and we'll get into those in a little bit. But besides your primary doctor or your gynecologist, there are other local clinics like a Planned Parenthood. And I'm not sure if Planned Parenthood is free or if it's like a low cost situation, depending on your insurance, or maybe if you're uninsured, it probably will be free, but you can always call, and they are all over the city. And Planned Parenthood is an amazing resource, whether it be for birth control, STD testing, even pregnancy testing, if you need to confirm something. You can also look up free community testing events. Sometimes if you're at like a fair or some sort of health festival, they'll have like little trucks. Sometimes they might do blood pressure checks. Some might do STD tests. So just, research that. If you don't feel comfortable going to your doctor or you don't have one and you want to get tested, please research how you can get tested for free, because there's a lot of resources out there that will not charge you for that STD testing. There are also at-home STI test kits, which make it very discreet and private, right? Nobody has to know but you. I don't know. On one hand, I like the fact that you can do it discreetly, but I also feel like it's important to establish a relationship with your provider, whether it be your primary doctor or your gynecologist, so that if God forbid the testing comes back positive, you're able to get the necessary treatment. Google, I know some people believe in Dr. Google, but Google's not a doctor, okay? So yes, it's very resourceful, but when it comes to our health, there's so much information out there, and there's also a lot of misinformation. So in my opinion, as your wellness coach, I think maybe establishing care with a primary, and it could be just a part of your yearly blood work, right? You don't even have to specifically say you want STD testing. Most providers will order it, and if they don't, you can just say, hey, while we're doing everything else, can we just add in some STD testing, please? So how do they test? What are the different forms or the different kinds of testing? Well, there are blood tests for certain conditions like HIV or even syphilis. I didn't talk about hepatitis too much because we can probably get on hepatitis a little later, but some doctors or providers will just go ahead and order hepatitis testing. There's 3 types, A, B, and C, and some of them are contracted through sex, so they may want to just do it with everything else, okay? So you have your blood tests for certain conditions. You have your urine test, which can check for chlamydia and gonorrhea. But there's also swabs that you can do, genital swabs, throat swabs, even rectal swabs. So those would be more than likely performed by your provider. So some providers, if they don't have to test you, or as a lady, if you're going to your gynecologist and they don't have to do a cervical or a vaginal exam, they may just have you pee in a cup and they can send it off to the lab and test. But a lot of providers, let's say you're getting your pap smear done or they have to check you out anyway, they will just go ahead and do a swab while they're in there. And also with your pap smear, a lot of times they can add on testing, HPV testing, chlamydia testing, even gonorrhea, I believe. If that's still the same way it was when I was working in the office, they were able to add on some additional testing to your swabs if, you requested that or if they felt like it would benefit you. So like I said, there's blood tests, there's urine tests, and there's swabs. And you can talk to your provider about what works best for you and also what's more comfortable for you. Okay. So I think even though this is a shorter Well Jawn Wednesdays, I believe, I think we kind of got to what's most important, right? STDs are very common. You get them from sex. So if you're not engaging in sex, you don't need to get checked for any sexually transmitted diseases. That's the good thing about whether it be abstinence or even celibacy. Of course, if you're celibate, that means you probably were active at one point and we want to make sure that we're still negative. But that's the good thing with avoiding it altogether. If that's in your, if that's what you want to do, if that's a part of your lifestyle, you don't have to worry about contracting any disease. However, if you are sexually active, which is not a bad thing, hopefully, if you are in a monogamous relationship or not, you're still getting checked yearly to ensure that you're in a clear. And of course, practicing safe sex is always the priority. Okay. Whether you're negative or not, getting in the habit of practicing safe sex and talking to your partner about it is important. And ladies, especially those younger ladies out there where it's a lot of pressure around sex. It's all over the media, right? All over social media. It's just very common. But for my young ladies out there, if you're not ready to be sexually active, that is okay. And there is nothing wrong with you, okay? Stand firm in your decision. Don't let your friends or even a potential partner make you think that there's something wrong or you're late or corny because you don't want to engage in sex. That is your decision. And the same thing for my young guys out there. If there's any young guys who are tuning in to Well Jawn Wednesdays, it's your decision when you're ready, okay? You're not corny. You're not old school or nothing like that because you said, I'm not comfortable and I don't want to do that right now, because you're preventing a lot of diseases, potential diseases and infections that some of these, I didn't get too deep into it, but some of these you can carry with you for life. You might be able to take medications to make it more manageable, but you carry this for life, and herpes is one of them. So please be sure to stand firm in your decision, regardless of what anybody else got to say, because it's not their business anyway. And if you are ready to engage in sex, please be safe about it, whether it be through condom use. For my young ladies out there, there is a vaccine for HPV called Gardasil. We spoke on that. If you feel comfortable and you want to get this vaccine to just ensure that you don't have to worry about getting human papillomavirus that can lead to cervical cancer, please talk to your gynecologist about it. But definitely use condoms. And there's plenty of condoms out there that are more, they're versatile. Let me just say that without getting too specific. You can still be safe and enjoy what it is that you're choosing to do, okay? So let's talk about some takeaways from today's show, okay? Some takeaways are that you should schedule your routine STI check, okay? Whether that be with your provider or even if you research local clinics like Planned Parenthood or some health fairs that might offer on-site testing, please be sure to schedule it. If you're in a situationship, a relationship, whether it's monogamous or not, talk to your partner about this. Even if you're uncomfortable, because this is about your health, right? So even if you all have been involved for a while, but you never spoke about STD testing, please be sure to say, hey, let's go get tested together. Because it's not a matter of you telling them of what they should be doing. It's what you both should be doing to ensure that you're healthy, okay? Also, for those of you that have tuned in, please share this episode with a friend. Because it's not always easy to talk about this kind of stuff. It's a very vulnerable and it could be an icky topic, especially if you've had an STD in the past or you might be dealing with one now or on treatment for one. But it's important, you all. It's just important and there's nothing wrong with it, okay? We talked about this already, keeping protection on hand, being abstinent if that's in your lifestyle right now, following up with providers, and encouraging if you have a sister, if you have a niece, if you have a friend or someone who you feel is kind of participating in risky behaviors, please share this with them and encourage them to go. And again, you can go with them. You all can go together so that they feel comfortable as well. So let's be some Well Jawns who are informed, empowered, and in charge of our sexual health, because it's our health and it's our priority. No one else is going to handle it for us. No one else is going to make sure we're safe but ourselves. There is no shame in this game of talking about it, just accountability, self-respect, and love. Okay, so that concludes our episode for today. I hope you learned something. I hope you feel empowered. I hope you feel inspired and a little more comfortable about talking about this, because we just need to be open and honest about what are some of the things we're facing. And if 1 in 2 of people who are sexually active are going to get an STD or have gotten an STD, then we need to be having this conversation. Okay, so I will check back in with you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please remember my virtual door is always open. So if you need to go on my bio, I have information to book a 30-minute clarity call with me. We can talk about some of your goals, where you are and where you want to be. Please be sure to register for the Safe Haven, my free monthly wellness talk, where we change topics every month depending on if a topic is popular. Sometimes they come back by popular demand, so you want to make sure you don't miss it. Okay, thank you so much yet again for being here with me, and I look forward to talking more and more about some health and wellness related topics. Please be sure to reach out if there's something that you want to hear about. Okay, I'm open. My virtual door is always open. Take care and be well. Bye.